And we're back.
We are
Welcome back,
back.
Liz.
Thanks, Russ. You too. So this is episode 30 for the author adventure, and we are here sharing the 5 secrets to success that every author should know. If they don't know, they should know these things. And Russ and I always try to give you a tip here up front because this is about the art and business of publishing. And so we want you to know these secrets so that you too can be successful in your author adventure. So I think today, Russ, we're going to share something about maybe why email is so important.
I think email, because a lot of people think that, we're all busy. We all have, things going on in our world. And, social media is so prevalent that some people forget that email is still incredibly powerful. And the reason it's powerful is because you actually have control over it. That is your list. That is your relationship. That's your ability to communicate and collaborate with the individuals in your environment. And the reality is as an author or anybody that is, expanding your mission and your message, you really need to have something that you can actually communicate with, to nurture, to build, and communicate with those individuals and the ones you're building relationships with. And email is the most powerful tool to do that one-on-one. And I want to refresh that idea with everybody here today, because it's important to understand that when you go to social, it's great to have lots of followers, likes, and all of that stuff. However, you don't have the opportunity, and if there's something happen and you get dropped, or they change the rules, and all of a sudden you don't have the same level of connection and communication with those
Yeah.
individuals. So it's really important. And Liz, I know that you've grown your list and continue to grow your list, and there's things we can do to grow our list. However, having a list is the most important piece of that puzzle. So if you want to learn more, you want to investigate this further, please reach out to us and allow us the opportunity to help you grow your list and actually your influence with your book. So Liz, what do we got on the agenda today?
Well, I'm of course just delighted today because this is we're having co-authors Burk Murchinson and Michael Granberry on, and they have a wonderful book called "Hole in the Ceiling," which is all about the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm a native Dallasite. There aren't that many of us, but I was born and raised here in Dallas. My cousin actually played for the Cowboys under Tom Landry, and so obviously that's the Cowboys have always been close to our hearts. So let's bring Burk and Michael up and talk to them about this great story, because not only is it a sports story, it's a business story, it's a story about the history of Dallas and the history of America's sport and America's team, which became the Dallas Cowboys. So,
Well, let's bring him on, because we lost Burke there for a minute, but he's back, and
yeah,
we'll keep it going. So with
Uh,
that,
hey Liz, I have one correction to make. The
okay.
title is "Hole in the Roof."
And the roof. I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Hole in the Roof. Yes.
So we've got the book cover, which will show up here in a little bit, and we have the Amazon link and all of that. So we'll be showing that. But tell our listeners kind of, how did y'all partner up? Why did you want to write this story? Why did you want to tell this story? Because like I say, there are a lot of there were a lot of pieces to this story, weren't there? I think.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Burke on this one. This was Burke approached me way back in 2011. That's when we started working on this. It was a very long process, and he had a dream. He wanted to tell his dad's story. And Burke, why don't you explain to Liz about that?
Well, it's Dad was the founder of the Cowboys, and he actually acquired the franchise in 1959. Startup season was in 1960 in the Cotton Bowl, and he went on and realized a further dream, which was to build a modern home for the team, and which opened in '71, and it was and it stayed open. It was the home of the Cowboys from then until 1971 through I guess it was 2008, the end of the season that year, and then subsequent to that, the stadium was demolished in like 2010, and just driving by, I just began, and Dad had already sold the team in '84, but just driving by the location, it caused me to think that, that people would just forget about it all if it somehow was not.
Yeah, because it's such an iconic place. I mean, everybody knew Texas. I mean, they knew when they drove by what it was, who it was, what was going on, and I mean, it was the first one of the first of its kind, wasn't it?
Oh, very definitely. And so it was at that time that I was concerned about that, and began to look into try to tell its story.
Right,
and
tell the story.
I knew I could do the research, and we ended up with a collaboration. But I knew I could do the research, and had a lot of background, a lot of Dad's friends and fellow business people, whatnot, that we could turn to. But what I needed, somebody could pull the story together and write it, and that's when I hooked up with Alan. With Mike Granberry. I was going to say Alan Peppard. I first approached Alan Peppard, who was also a journalist with the Morning News, and he thought it over, but it wasn't something that I think at the time was something he could dedicate time to. But he had worked for years with Michael Granberry, and recommended him, and so we spoke and were able to make a deal, and the rest is history.
Yeah, for sure. And it does. It's a long process sometimes, isn't it, Michael and Burk both? I mean, people talk all the time about writing a story in a week or and not in my mind. If you want to seriously tell a story, it takes time and it takes research. And like you say, sometimes it's years, to get it all together and to make sure it all fits together and it flows. And a lot of times you're moving stuff around, in that editing process. And so we tell people, we want people to know, because this is kind of a show for authors or people that want to be an author. And that's why we shared some of those tips earlier. But, we want people to know everybody does it different. And just because I write a children's book, maybe in 3 or 4 months or 6 months, sometimes when you write a longer novel like y'all are writing, it may take years. It may take a lot of people. It takes 3, 4, 5, 10 years to actually get something written and published and out in the marketplace. So what was the experience like for you, Michael? Because this is your first book, isn't it? Even though you have a author in your household.
Right. That's right. Well, Burk and I, what was interesting about the process is we one very big thing we have in common is we've been Cowboy fans since the team was founded in 1960. Obviously his dad founded the team and was the first owner, but my dad and I started going to the games in 1960. And my whole family, we've always been Cowboy fans, even though, it's like being part of a family, right? In recent years, we've been aggravated with them in the way that you might get aggravated with family members, right? But,
right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
But, it was like Burk had already done a lot of research. He had a lot of files, and he had a list of people to talk to. And one of the things that was interesting was a lot of these money people or business people that he recommended I call. I mean, they had fascinating stories. They had incredible things to say.
And they were all pretty much willing to talk to you, weren't they? I mean,
we didn't really. I don't recall anybody. I don't recall anybody not being willing to talk to us. And a lot of these people, they had such incredible stories. And I said, well, you've never been interviewed by a newspaper or a magazine about this? And they said, no. And which that alone was fascinating to me.
Right. Astonishing. Yeah.
But there were, like the book is actually many things, it's a biography of Clint Jr., Burk's dad. It's a little bit of in the beginning of the book, we kind of go into the entire Murchison family history. It's a full history of the Cowboys, even going back to 1952, when he first wanted to buy a team. And by the way, Liz, that's a trivia question. We ask at public events, which I will ask you. there are
Okay.
three current National Football League teams that used to make their home in Dallas in the Cotton Bowl. Can you name all three?
Oh, I cannot. I am not. My brother could, because my
Well,
brother
one of them
could.
is pretty easy. You could probably
Right.
name
The
one of
Dallas
them.
Cowboys.
There you go. And when from 1960 through 1962, there was a team in the Cotton Bowl called the Dallas Texans,
Right. I was going to say
which
it
are
was
now the Kansas City Chiefs.
Chiefs.
But what most
Okay.
people don't realize, in 1952, there was a team in the Cotton Bowl for one season called the Dallas Texans also. And that franchise is currently the Indianapolis Colts.
Wow.
Burke's dad lost out on the chance to buy that team. That opportunity went instead to a man named Carroll Rosenblum, who bought what was left of that franchise and moved it to Baltimore, where it became the Baltimore Colts for many years. And then a new owner from the Irsay family moved it to Indianapolis, where it is now. But there was a lot of amazing history. But we also wanted, one of the things that I wanted to do was kind of make it relevant to today. And the common thread throughout the book is the concept of the stadium. Burke's dad really was responsible for creating the prototype of the modern stadium, which has become a revenue stream for many owners. But I think Burke would agree with me, in many cases, this has gone a little crazy. And, I mean, you have high school stadiums now that are spending tens of millions of dollars on stadiums. So really, we wanted to focus on the stadium. And it was interesting because in 1966, which was the Cowboys' first winning season, the Cotton Bowl, which was built in 1930, was one of the league's newer stadiums. I mean, there was one stadium that was built in the 1800s.
Oh, wow.
And it was so, Burke's dad really changed the dynamics of the league in creating or making the stadium not only a pleasant place to watch a game aesthetically, but also making it an economic engine, which it certainly is today. And one more point I'll make about that is we had a 2-hour interview with Jerry Jones, who was kind of the first in creating the super opulent stadium, that being AT&T Stadium, which has since been supplanted by SoFi Stadium in LA. But Jerry had a really interesting quote. He said, when he bought the team in '89, he felt like, the stadiums in terms of revenue were still in the bottom quartile, is the word he used, of revenue. And he wanted to elevate that. He wanted to put that in the first quartile. In other words, make it maybe the number one revenue stream for an owner, which
for owners.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, Burke, let me ask you, what's your first memory of the team and of playing? I mean, I'm sure you were at multiple games or down on the fields, and what was it like to be that close with some of those great guys that played all those years?
Oh, it was really amazing. And early on, I actually went to, as a youngster, went to a couple of the training camps. And it was, it was really fun because you're kind of just around these people, day to day kind of thing, and around the coaches. And actually, Tom Landry, the coach, his son, Tom Landry Jr., it turned out, just my age, and we ended up going to school together and got to know each other and spent time at training camp together.
We lost him. We lost him.
Sorry,
He'll come back. That's okay.
I didn't so I didn't have that privilege, but I would go to couple weeks at a time out to several of the training camps and go to some of the away games, the exhibition games. I remember one particularly exciting one was we ended up in 1 year up in Cleveland at a doubleheader. And it was kind of fascinating, where the Cowboys played in the first of 2 games. I think we played Detroit, I think I recall properly. And then as our game, the Cowboys game, was winding down, or as it closed, just almost minutes after it ended, here come the Cleveland Browns marching on the field to play the second
The second game.
the second of two games. It's really kind of fascinating and interesting.
Right. Too fun. Too fun. Well, what was the hardest part about writing the book? Was it just trying to get all the pieces together and because I'm sure it was so much information
Yeah.
that you had to just, make smaller just because of time. I mean, I'm sure you could have wrote a 1,000-page book, but
Right.
it's hard to get somebody to buy that. So, was that one of the struggles, or was it something else?
Well, I think, I mean, I had never written a book before, but I'd written a lot of, magazine length pieces, long form
Long
pieces
form pieces.
for newspapers and magazines. But yes, I mean, Burke did a great job of assembling a tremendous amount of information. Then I did interviews as well and did research on my own. So we had a ton of material, not all of which we could use, right? And the thing that finally represented kind of a breakthrough for me is something I already knew, but it really helped in this process, and that was, the timeline, particularly with nonfiction. The timeline is your friend. I mean, you read any great work of nonfiction,
Yeah.
when there's a timeline there, right? And by adhering to the timeline, by sticking to that, being faithful to that, then you can just kind of it's almost like the timeline is like a
These were the
Christmas
highlights.
tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can start putting ornaments on,
Right.
later. But the timeline is the thing that really anchors the story. And there was quite a long timeline in this case, but
Right.
one that even predated 1960. And so that was very helpful. And then the other thing that I learned a long time ago was back in 1980, when I was covering the NBA, I had the pleasure of meeting the great writer, David Halberstam, who wrote so many books, the late, great David Halberstam. And one of the things he told me about nonfiction, and you can really see this in his work, I recommend his work even today, is, to a large extent, nonfiction is a series of profiles. You're profiling people. And there were so many incredible personalities, starting with Burke's dad, who was an absolutely incredible character and personality. And then you had so many others along the way. And so you end up kind of profiling these people and describing them as individuals to the reader. And you do that within the framework of the timeline. And so that really helps. And then you can kind of, because of the timeline, you can really kind of see the arc of the story and where it's going.
Well, Burke, what's one of your favorite stories or favorite chapters? Maybe would be a better way to. Is there something that you're really that had to go in no matter what? That we had to tell this story.
Did he hear that?
I
He
don't
must
think
have
he heard
heard
it. He got dropped off. Well, that's okay. We'll come back on here in a minute. So the book is called "A Hole in the Roof," and the subtitle is. Can you give me the rest of it, Michael? I should have wrote it.
Oh, let's see what it is. Let's see the Dallas Cowboys, Clint Murchinson Jr., and the stadium that changed American sports forever.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. So, like you say, it's that whole. I'm a history buff, so and being from Dallas, that was especially of interest to me, and just growing up and not necessarily being close to those things, but knowing about it, hearing about it, driving by obviously the stadium. My brother and my dad went to games just like you, as we were talking about earlier. My dad was a varsity baseball coach and the JV football coach at one of the local Dallas ISD, and he was the only DISD coach to win a state baseball championship, and so sports was a big thing. But we played more baseball than we did football because of that. But my cousin Burton Lawless, 66, played.
That was your cousin, Burton Lawless?
Yeah. So of course my dad, when Burton was playing, my dad and my brother went to the games a lot. I was, I was not as interested, and they didn't ask. They probably didn't even ask me to go. But
he was a great player.
Yeah, what a great thing. It's so, so sad when he got hurt, but he made it to came around, came to the other side of it. And so had a great life and doing other things. So but I know he appreciated that chance and that opportunity he had the years he got to play. And then I'm involved in Dallas and nonprofits in the African American Museum. So I know Billy Joe Dupree. I've met Preston Pearson, on Pearson on a bunch of occasions. A lot of those guys that played during those years for Tom Landry. And like you say, before the money got big. And then, Emmett Smith and, those guys too were always involved in community activity that we did. So it was nice to see some of those guys, meet those guys personally. But it's just astonishing, I think, the impact that football has on America and this team. Don't you? I mean, I'm sure, Burke, you don't go anywhere that somebody doesn't talk about the team. Can you go
Well,
any place? And
yes, it's kind of crazy. I mean, it's like, it was something that it was during the era that Dad's era in their 60s that it really caught on with TV.
uh-huh,
And it's just like continued to skyrocket in
the skyrocket.
popularity. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable how popular it's gotten and continues to grow. So it's fabulous.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, I appreciate. I was telling Michael, that history was so important, and we tell a lot of like Western history and multicultural history because I'm also in the rodeo business, as you can see behind me. I write about Western history and characters. It's those personalities. It's those people that sometimes were ordinary people, but they lived extraordinary lives because of their choices.
Yeah,
Just like your dad. Your dad made a choice. He made an active decision to build a new stadium
right.
to generate revenue, in additional revenue for the team in some form or fashion. And that you just got to have vision for that. That, like you say, that doesn't just come to everybody, to any guy on the street, and it doesn't just happen overnight either.
Yeah,
I'm sure it was a long process.
it was interesting because Dad, uh, it was I think it was always a passion of his to build a stadium to showcase the team, and it's interesting because he waited. He knew the team had to survive before he could get to the stadium. But in '63, the beginning that or that the off season '63, the Texans, it's the primary, the Texans, Lamar Hunt's Texans and Dad's Cowboys were playing head to head
Right.
in the Cotton Bowl, and nobody could really survive in that environment. But finally, Lamar moved his team to Kansas City, and at that point, Dad knew there was an opening for his team, for the Cowboys to actually truly become profitable. And it was at that moment that he turned towards beginning to look to build a new stadium. So it was all timing in his
Yeah.
mind. But he had always wanted to do a stadium. It was really a challenge for him, and one that he was ready for when
Ready
the
for it. Yeah.
opportunity came.
When it came by and made it happen, and I'm sure it took a lot of risk and had a lot of conversations with people all
Oh yeah,
across, because it's not something it's not something you just go out and buy a piece of land and build. You got to deal with the city, you got to deal with the county, you got to deal with state. I mean, I'm sure there's all kinds of
he went to war with the city of Dallas with the mayor and Eric Johnson and Robert
right.
Cullum, who's the head of the one of the mayor's best friends and was head of the state fair, and
Yeah. Yep.
they would have no, they were just couldn't buy into Dad's vision, and that
Right.
caused them to, after a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, it caused him to shift to Irving,
Right. Right.
which
Yeah.
which in his mind, Irving was the site that they selected in Irving was superior to a downtown stadium for the fans themselves, but he
Right.
felt like a downtown stadium and the Performing Arts Center and museums that he hoped
Support. Yeah.
to support and bring in would have done so much more for Dallas
Yeah.
in
For the
terms of
city.
you're right in
Yeah.
terms of raising its profile and whatnot.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think it's a shame because it's kind of the good and bad. I mean, it's kind of the two-sided coin of Fair Park is, we love it, we love the history, we love the Art Deco, but also, like you say, keeps a lot of other things from going on because of that. So,
Well, it did for a long time.
yeah,
And
for a
of
long
course,
time.
that's changed now, but but the people that were back in Fair Park at the time, they just couldn't, and that included the mayor and Robert Cullum and the city council.
Yeah,
They just, they just couldn't see beyond it, which is,
right.
it's almost like a tragic failure in
Yeah,
hindsight.
in hindsight, yeah, for sure. Well,
Mhm.
Michael, what was your favorite story of all of it, or was there a favorite interview or somebody that y'all talked to over the course of writing this and editing and rewriting? I'm sure.
Well, there's so many examples, but one of the things that that I thought was kind of fun was there were a lot of opportunities for humor. I mean, Burke's dad was really a funny guy,
A
and
funny
he
guy.
loved practical jokes. And the way that he actually got the franchise, he essentially bribed the Washington owner. Who did not want to vote for Dallas being included as a franchise, and it required a unanimous vote.
Mhm.
So Clint managed to acquire the rights to the Washington team song, and this guy
Hail to the Redskins.
Hail to the rescue.
although we don't say that word anymore. So hail to the R's. Anyway,
Too bad it's kind of ruined the story,
yeah. But anyway, he loved. I mean, George Preston Marshall just worshiped that song, and
Right.
it's incredible that he wasn't on top of the copyright, but he wasn't, and
Yeah.
so it ended up, through a series of events, it ended up in Clint's control, and he said he would sell it back to him, or give it back to him, if he would go ahead and vote for the Cowboys, which he did. And there were so many odd characters, like George Preston Marshall being one, and then a lot of funny stories, zany stories. It was really interesting to delve
What
into.
about Mike? Why don't you tell them the one about Tony Dorsett, TD33?
Yeah, now that involved the motorcycle, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like actually, you may remember that better. Like Landry did not. Okay, one of the players got injured on a motorcycle, right?
Right,
Uh-huh.
but we I forgot when we drafted TD33, Tony Dorsett, but several years prior to that, I think it was in the I think it's the 71 season. We had players, they were out on the weekend on their day off on the Mondays. They were out motorbiking out on somebody's
And they got
ranch.
hurt. Yeah.
And one of the key players, the lineman, shattered his leg, and it just almost killed Landry, but he was able to bring somebody in to replace him. We still went to the Super Bowl and won, but several years later than that, wasn't it around 77, Mike? I think we drafted Tony Dorsett, and Dad got wind of it. I mean, and he was certainly excited, but he customized a dirt bike and had painted it in cowboy colors, and had Tony Dorsett on each side, and on the little license plate was TD33.
Right.
He had somebody park it in Tom Landry's parking space out at the training center. So he was kind of.
I love it. And at one point, Tony, he actually played with a broken foot or ankle or something, didn't he? And I remember something, talking with him about something, and
Who was this?
Tony, I think, didn't he? I think he actually played, one of the championship games where he actually got hurt but didn't know it. He just, because he said, I had to keep running.
Yeah, I'm sure something like that happened. Those players
just got to keep playing, and especially when you're that close and you're in the championship game. And I think it was really close to, it's when he was close to, getting, going over the making his yardage, he was about to break the record or something, and he was like, I got to keep playing, and that's what those guys are, they just I think they would have like you say, we may have some issues now, with head injuries and stuff. But I can tell you, everybody I know that played would still play. You
Isn't that great?
know, there's just something about the competition and something about this, sport that brings out, and I think it's camaraderie and I think it's team. And I think there's something about being a part of that. I mean, even with the newspaper, Michael, don't you say? I mean, everybody down there at the news, I feel like y'all are a team. And all these years, yeah, we had such great writers. We had such great, editors and people, columnists and stuff. And, I miss that some of that's going away, because it
Well,
was
they
just a
love
special time.
they love Michael down there. I know that, and that really, I think that was confirmed when, in introducing the book, the publication date was early December, and they did a full page ad, not ad,
And
but the cover shot or
uh-huh,
photograph with our book mentioned. And
uh-huh,
it's basically, it was in honor to, I think, Michael and all the years that he's worked down there and the friends he's made. It was
yeah,
fabulous to have that kind of
Yeah,
exposure.
that was very helpful to us. I say, and we've both been very touched by how warmly people are responding to the book and how much they're liking
right.
it. We've done several public appearances, and I was just in Eatsy's the other night, and the pizza chef like cornered me and said, "I love this book. I just love this book." And he said he had grown up in Dallas, and the
Yeah,
stories meant so much to him, and
did
yet
so
he
much
was
to
surprised he learned new things from it that he didn't know before.
yeah,
And so, it's been a real pleasure in that regard. It has been received very warmly by Cowboy fans, and
right.
we appreciate that. So I was even I contribute music on a regular basis to this podcast, the Tony Kornheiser Show. Tony is on
Uh-huh,
ESPN every day,
uh-huh,
and I was on there briefly, and this guy wrote in. A couple of people wrote in letters to the show, which were so nice. About their cowboy memories and
right.
like
Remember.
the book and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's really fun. So it's A Hole in the Roof, and it's available on Amazon, and it's by Burk Murchison. I'm going to spell that for you, those of you that are listening to this as a podcast later. It's Burk Murchinson, Murchinson, and Michael Granberry, and so that's Michael Michael Granberry. Michael Granberry, Burk Murchinson, their book Hole in the Roof. I mean, our time goes so fast. We may have to have you guys
Can
come
I
back on again. So
may
yeah,
I,
we kind of got one last minute here. Give us
Oh,
your
may I add
thoughts.
something?
to
May
say
I add
something.
something, please?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's Murchison, like a K,
Murchinson,
and
Murchinson,
it's
not
no
Murk.
N. There's no N. It's not a CHINSON. It's ISON. So Murchison,
ISON, no
and it's like
N. All right.
a K. That's very important.
It is very
Yeah,
important.
that would make Dad really upset to have it mis-
We'll change it. We'll change it in all the notes and on all the
Okay.
stuff. But
Okay.
available on Amazon. But how else? Is there another way that somebody can get in touch with y'all if they'd like y'all to come out and speak or talk about the book or do a book reading or a book review or anything like that?
Have book will travel, right, Mike?
That's right. They could contact our publisher, Texas
Okay.
A&M Press, and
Press.
and if they wanted us to come speak or something like that, they could reach out to them,
Okay.
and that's probably the best way. I'm also on Twitter and Facebook, and but Burke is the god of social media. I mean, he's unbelievable. So
Yeah.
I will never.
I'm still trying to figure that out, just like
Yeah.
I am my cell phone.
I
Exactly.
know.
I'm
That's
challenged. I'm challenged.
Yeah.
Well, it's great to have y'all on. We appreciate so much that y'all would spend the time and energy, because as a writer, I know it's a lot. There's a lot more involved, and there are a lot of moving parts to publishing. I've been in this a long time myself. My mother had a Christian bookstore in Dallas, and in addition, while my dad was a coach, and he was at Samuel for over 33 years. Actually, at Old Pleasant Grove High School, he started, but he loved his
Isn't that
coaching,
right?
and he loved the school and the kids, and he loved Dallas. And like I say, we've always been Cowboy fans in our family, and I know there's so many people across the country that are, are going to love this book and are going to want to get a copy.
Well, Mike has done a fabulous job bringing it all together.
Oh, well, thank you,
Burk. He's interwove the Cowboy history with the stadium and with Dallas history, and it makes for it's really a fascinating read for anybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, Burk.
Right. I think so. Well, I appreciate it so much. Like you say, good luck to y'all. We hope you have a great time with this. We know you're going to sell a lot of these books, and we're going to do what we can to help you do that. And so we're over our time, but I always go over a little bit. So I'm just going to go with it. And so this has been episode 30 with authors Burk Murchinson and Michael Granberry. Did I get it right?
No, you're wrong again, but that's okay.
All right. Tell me one more time.
Murchison.
See that Burk and Murchison.
Yeah, you're getting it down now.
Okay. We got Murchison and Michael Granberry. Well, we appreciate you guys so much being on the show with us today. And we appreciate you writing this book and putting this out there and telling the stories, because our stories are important.
Sure.
And, they impact so many people's lives. And so we just wish you the best of luck. And we appreciate you being on the
We appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. We really appreciate it.
So we'll talk to you guys next week. We're here every Tuesday at 5 p.m. for the author adventure. And so be sure to go back. You can watch this show on the recording. It'll be live on our YouTube channel tomorrow. And so you can always come back and listen to that. And we just appreciate y'all so much. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.